Hello, everybody. I'm Meredith, and welcome to Conversation with Friends. And I'm really pleased to introduce you to a new friend. It was actually not so new now. It's been some months ago that we got together for coffee. You had just moved back to South Florida, right? From New York. I think you were in New York.
Right.
And you're doing some really great things here, but you've been doing a lot of great things. And I want you to meet Alejandro Rodriguez, who is a multi-talented artist. He's an actor. He's performed at the Kennedy Center, at the Lincoln Center, has a play that he produced or was the writer for, that's traveling around Canada. Let me think, there's so many things that you've done. Let me just take a quick look at what else. Oh, the artistic director of Artists to End Poverty. You were the executive director of that for some time. And now you are, I said writer, director, actor. Did I miss something? Did I miss something?
You've covered enough.
Okay. We'll talk about that. But now he is currently with the Peace Studio. And I know you've heard me talk about the Peace Studio, and he can mention the importance of this nonprofit organization as the artistic director. And he's now doing a program that's happening right now, beginning to happen, called The Artist as Catalyst. And I think maybe we should just start with that because it's so important what you're doing, Ali. How did you get the idea to do this? And what is it all about when it comes to artists being the ones that can really, young artists, I should say, promote change in society?
I love it. Thank you, Meredith. I'm so thrilled to be here, and it warms my heart that you called me a friend. I feel the same way, and I feel like this is truly, we're living up to the title, Conversations with Friends. So I'm really grateful to be here. And yeah, it really comes from that kind of multi-hyphenate life that you just described. I think there are instances when I hear my bio read, or I try to put one together, that it feels quite discombobulated or disparate. But the truth is, all of these efforts have emerged quite naturally and organically from the way I think about being an artist in the world, really being a human in the world, and a human who happens to like making things and like being creative and generative, which is to say, I live in, so I like making things, so there's going to be some level of craft and artistry. You want things that you make to be well made, and so you're going to train, you're going to study, you're going to get better at that. So let's call that the bucket of let's say artistry or craft, or some may call it technique. There's also the question of living in this world, and that means you're related to industries and economics, and you've got to figure out how to stay afloat, if you will. So there's a part of me that's always taken quite seriously the practicalities of being an artist, right? How do I get funding for my work? How do I make sure that I have food in the fridge, that I maybe one day am able to travel to some of the cities I've never visited, right? Which requires resources. And I've always been grounded in that question as well. And then finally, from when I was a little kid, I guess I just intuited that making art should be about its impact on other people. I guess there are people in the history of art that make art for art's sake, as they say, or treat it more as sort of a self-reflective practice. I have my reflective practices, but the art that I make to be shared is for the world. And so social impact has always been part of it. That leads me to the Artist as Catalyst program. It's inspired by a program I ran when I was in New York at my alma mater of Juilliard. And the executive director of the Peace Studio, Thomas West, was an alumni of this program. And so we've partnered to bring a version that is for Miami, by Miami, here this summer. And it's about investing in the next generation of leaders in the arts down in South Florida. And we are going to invest in them in all the ways I just mentioned. We're going to invest in their social impact intentions and goals. We're going to invest in the practicalities of how they make ends meet as an artist. And we're going to give them time and space and support in just getting better at the art that they make, because for me, as you can tell by that bio, all of those things have always been linked and threaded together. And they're what make up a fulfilling life in the arts, I'd say.
Well, I can see that you have been very fulfilled. And I'm interested in knowing, you said when you were quite young, you knew that it wasn't just about art for art's sake. And I'm sure that there's a lot of artists that just see themselves as artists. They paint, they sing, they're trying to get ahead, trying to make a living, as you say, because that's not so easy. We see a lot of stars and people that make it, but let's face it, most artists, it's a tough world, isn't it? But you're saying that when you were very young, you had this feeling that you wanted to do something that would impact people. And I was wondering, how did you realize that you had that idea, that feeling?
It's a great question. I think there were a few different models that I had. I think I grew up in a family that was very other focused, was very service oriented. That my grandparents brought our family over from Cuba, and that was a major sacrifice that was largely motivated by giving the children a better shot at things and a more prosperous sort of on-ramp to their adult lives. And so if you think about it, and this is so many immigrants' story, but if that's the sort of catalyzing just a beginning of your origin story, right? These old folks uprooting themselves, moving to a country where they don't know anyone, where they don't speak the language. Service is going to be in the air that you breathe, right? It's going to be so much a part of the conversation because you grow up thinking about, wow, they did that for us, they did that for my mom and dad. They did that for us. So how do I pay that forward? I grew up in a Christian family, Catholic to be more specific. And although I grew to have a complicated relationship with institutions, religious institutions, still the stories that we were learning about Jesus and about his sort of love, his message of loving your neighbor and loving your enemies even stayed with me and has stuck with me to this day. And it was always just based on communication. I thought of art as getting something across to another person, so being thoughtful about that
sounds like it's in your blood, was in your blood. How did your parents feel? Because people who have come here from another country, they want their kids to have a stable life, right?
Ooh, yeah.
I have heard, that it's often they want them to, go get a job, like a job, a 9-to-5 job, or have a specific profession. Art is a profession, but a traditional profession because they feel that, their child will be safer. So I'm just wondering, but then there's maybe other parents that just see their kid has so much talent that they say, go for it. So I'm wondering, how did your parents react to you saying, this is my world, art?
It's a great question. I can tell you know and love a lot of artists, Meredith, because you painted I pretty much got a little bit of all of that, to be honest with you. Mom has always had a lot of trust in me and that I would figure out my way. And so she kind of went along for the ride. And when I caught the theater bug, she would travel with me to thespian tournaments and support me in my sort of summer adventures to go learn more. And even, would let me travel. I think I left the state the summer after my 7th grade. And then sometime in high school, she let me go to Dublin, Ireland to study theater. And so I feel I even got a little emotional when I was sharing that with you, because I've just always felt a sense of trust from her. And not to say that the other members of my family didn't trust me, but my dad was definitely the one who had more than one sort of sit down to ask me to consider, or should we say reconsider, and his angle was always like, you're so studious, you got such good grades, you can do anything why don't you do something that's going to make you a lot of money? So that
That's
was
an immigrant attitude, though, isn't it, for many people who have come from other countries, because they have had to go through that survival process. And, again, they want to see their kids thrive, and they don't want to have the lack of stability. But the truth is, in today's world, everything's unstable, right? Nothing is set in stone anymore. So I think you have to do what your heart tells you to do.
and if there are art enthusiasts or nascent artists listening, I'll just say that the skills that you develop in practicing art, especially the collaborative arts where you work with others, are so immensely transferable to any industry and any profession. So I tell parents who are nervous now about sending their kids on, I said, getting a degree in theater, let's say, is a form of a liberal arts degree, right? It's studying human nature. And I have seen people move through their arts training to such surprising and diverse careers, and you could read all these studies now, all these CEOs who say creativity and collaboration and communication are so instrumental to the new jobs that are out there. So don't think about it as signing up to live under a bridge, people. That's not what
Just go for it. And I love what you're saying, because now it's, as you say, every organization needs and will thrive when there are artists in the midst, right? And I have seen that with things that I've been involved with. Just put one artist, in the room and something changes. I mean, I remember when I was working for WLRN for so many years, and we would have a certain amount of money for a set, but we wouldn't, it would be on budget to somebody, and I remember we had such a creative director, and all of a sudden he would show up and the whole set would change. And I say, where did you get that? He goes, I found it in my house. He says, I just went around my house and found things that would work for a set. And I would go, my God, you're not just a director, but you're a set director. And it was more than that. It was his creativity. And he always had an idea. It was like that light bulb was always on, in the head. And and it's a joy really to be around people who do have that creative spirit. And isn't it? It really can change everything.
I sometimes bemoan the fact that a word like imagination, and this is the truth for a few different of these so-called soft skills. In fact, even calling them soft skills kind of points at what I'm naming. But something like imagination feels like such a flighty, such a nice to have, not a must have. It's nice to have. You're imaginative. And I think sometimes it's even said in a patronizing way to young people, oh, so imaginative. But the idea of being able to see something that's not there yet, right? For your creative director to see something at his house and imagine that it could be used on set, or to see the blank set and imagine what it could be under the budget that you had. A product and imagine what the next iteration could be, a marketing campaign and imagine a sort of set of images and text that could resonate with people. Like it shouldn't be looked down upon. It shouldn't be thought of as flighty. I think it's central to our ability to progress and evolve. And artists, we go to the gym for imagination. We are Olympians of the imagination. So I'm right there with you, Meredith.
Well, what I love is, and as I listen to you, I'm feeling it is when you're around artists as well, they are the enthusiasm. It's not just, oh, let me do my work, let's get ahead, let's be successful. In fact, I don't even think that's usually, there's somebody up there, right? Maybe executive producers are worrying about the budget, but the artists aren't. They have to at some level, but they're the ones who, it's like you say, it's just all about the creativity and doing something new and doing something different, which again brings me back to what you're planning to do. It's happening right now. With these young artists, because we're talking about very young artists, right? Young, they haven't been around for too long in the arts world, have they? Aside from childhood, maybe college years.
Yeah, 18 to 26. So we think of it as kind of the emerging chapter of their careers, right? They're either just getting into their training programs or their undergrad, or just emerging from their first sort of first years of college. So yeah, the concrete is still very much wet.
So what is it? I mean, why? I'm sure there are people, they're not 26, they're 30, they're 35, and they're not really able to be part of this specific program. You could have others in the future, but what is it about this age that you feel, I mean, they are really, in a way, the artists of the future, aren't they?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I haven't been asked that recently, and I'm glad to think it through with you. I think my draw to this demographic comes from the fact that it's the first time in your life that many, not all, but many artists are moving away from home.
Mm-hmm.
And so they are beginning to receive models of what a professional life or a so-called career, I have mixed feelings about that word, but they go from having their sort of home be the center, and maybe the teachers they had in high school, but they've had this set of models. And then at 18, they almost like wipe the slate clean, or at the very least, they add a whole new set of models. Their college professors, their mentors, their schoolmates in college or in conservatory. And so I think of it as an incredibly exciting time, and also a time that for me set the course for what the next decade and 2 decades was going to be. It was the people that I met in that time. It was the skills that I developed in that time that really oriented me for the work I was going to do for a while afterwards. And so, you mentioned A-Step, Artists Striving to End Poverty, where I actually ended up as the deputy executive director, just to clarify that. That program, I met I met the people who were getting that program off the ground at 18 years old. And so that's an example of, I spent the next 15 years of my life building that nonprofit. And so if we can be a sort of benevolent impact, if we can have like a positive intervention in these young people's lives at that moment, I feel like it pays dividends for so many years afterwards.
You sound like a banker as well, right? That it will pay off too. It's not just about, it goes beyond that. It's going to create a lot of success, in a different way.
Impact. Yeah.
What is it that you hope, though, to do with these artists? Because we're talking about artists that, I think your whole thrust is really about artists who can make an impact in the world. So do you believe, and I know that this is, kind of a very big part of the Peace Studio, that through the arts, and also they have, journalism too as part of their work, but do you believe that the arts can truly create an impact where some really good change, and I mean good benevolent change, can happen as a result of what they do, these artists do?
I sure hope so.
Or you wouldn't be doing it, right?
Yeah. No, I think that the arts, we can talk about the arts in so many ways. It's a calling, it's an industry, it's a profession, it's product, right? You call a painting a piece of art, or a song a piece of art. Ultimately, one way of thinking about it is that it's an umbrella term for this set of skills, this set of perspectives, such as imagination, creativity, listening, collaboration, and how it's instrumental, like active listening. And I know, Meredith, that all the positive change that I've seen around me, whether it's in an individual, in a relationship, in a family, in a neighborhood, or in a city, state, or country, has come from the activation of those sets of skills, of listening to each other, of imagining a better way of doing things, of being empathetic and putting yourself in someone else's shoes. That is the domain of the arts. So not only do I think that arts catalyzes positive change, or can, I think it's one of the only things that does. So I've put my chips, now to use some poker metaphor, I've put my chips fully in that corner, because I think it's the most powerful force for change that I've encountered.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think that even people that don't realize it out there in society may not even realize that something that they saw, whether it was a play or music that they heard, or something that they read, did significantly change their path. It did put them on a different path, had an effect in terms of their life, their relationships, everything. And, this is the time for change, isn't it? I mean, do you feel that this time more than any other time is just something happening? Something's happening that in spite of all the challenges but there is something happening that is really good in terms of benevolent change can happen.
I would say because of all the challenges, Meredith.
Yeah, right.
I think we're desperate for it. I think there are folks who it's no longer it would be nice for things to change. I think there's a lot of us who are getting to a point where it's imperative that things change. And so, yeah, I feel the urgency. I think maybe it's a President Obama quote, and I apologize if I'm misquoting, but the fierce urgency of now.
Mm.
I love that phrase. I think we all feel the fierce urgency of now. And so just trying to be part of that movement.
I love what you're saying, and absolutely. I think, maybe there was a time, though I'm not sure if there's ever been a time when nothing's happening. There's always been some main, issues in the world, but where life was maybe seemed on the surface for people, it probably wasn't, but where people felt life is okay, right? Even if you went back a few years ago, you weren't worrying about, the price of gas and dying from COVID, all the things that people are we go from one worry to another. And before that, maybe if everything seemed pretty much okay, then people weren't really calling out for change, for some really good change. But now it's like the old ways aren't working, are they? And so this is the time. This is the time where change can really create a new and hopeful and better society or communities. And I'm wondering why. I mean, you came back to Miami. So how do you feel about Miami and Miami's art scene and the artists, the theater, the music, and, because you've been around here long enough now. You had left, so you weren't around for a long time. So what has been your feeling about Miami coming home?
Well, I grew up here, so there's a part of me that feels like I have a deeply complex and subjective relationship to it. I realize that when I talk to people who have really just arrived, there's been a lot of new transplants to Miami in the last couple of years, and I feel a little sometimes squirrely or uncomfortable when I feel like they're objectifying someone that I love. They say, oh, it's sometimes very positively, oh, Miami is so this and Miami is so that. It's so beautiful. I've heard people say everyone's happy here, or it's such a tolerant city, and these things in certain circumstances are true. But if you've gotten to know a person, for example, you know that everything that is true is in other circumstances also not true at times, and so my relationship to Miami is that sort of long, complex, rich relationship where I know the diverse and beautiful and tolerant Miami. I've also encountered the places and moments in Miami where I wish for so much more, and which is one of the reasons that I'm active down here trying to be part of that change. But generally speaking, it's unrepeatable. It is a delta of so many streams of culture and history, of ecology, everything from the flora and the fauna, the fruits, the trees. A lot of the writing I've been doing recently has been about the natural world that surrounds us here, but also like the humans and that date back to the before we were incorporated as a city, the Bahamians and the tribe, the indigenous folks who were here, and then added to all of these layers of migration, right? The African Americans who came from the South, the Cubans, followed by so many Central and South American movements. It's just, it's unique and idiosyncratic, and for me, an inspiring place to make art, because there's a surprise around every corner.
It's an interesting place. And I really do believe there's no city in the country like Miami, and it continues to evolve. It continues to change, the good, the bad, sometimes, more good, sometimes some bad, but it's a fascinating place to live. And I think it's a great place for you to get your work done and
Ah,
work with these young artists. And so, last question, what is your vision for these young artists that you're going to be working with? And I think there'll be about maybe 15 of them, something like that, that you'll be
yeah,
working with them for a couple of days, right?
right, exactly.
The Artist as Catalyst program, right?
That's right. Artist is
Yeah.
Catalyst this summer, 2022. And we'll take a small, intimate cohort, as Meredith said, about 15 to 20. We'll get 2 days with them, 2 full days, and we'll have evening programming from 9 in the morning to 9 at night, full days. And my vision is that they leave with some skills. They leave with some useful mindsets that they can bring into their work. And above and beyond that, those would be great takeaways. But for me, that they leave with some relationships, that for me is where those are the gifts that keep on giving. If there can be collaborations, partnerships, bands that are formed, mentorships with the speakers, I just want the folks who meet in this program to stay in touch and keep talking, because as you know, no radical change is going to be accomplished within 2 days, but relationships can be formed that then facilitate that deeper transformative change. And so I hope a community is built, an intergenerational community that goes out of the Artist Catalyst program, and for years and years to come helps make this place a better and more inclusive and more joyful place to live.
I am sure that all that you've said will happen. And I think it's going to actually be even more. And I have participated in similar kinds of things with the media and the arts over the years. Actually, before the Peace Studio, with Images and Voices of Hope, which merged with the Peace Studio. And I have seen transformation happen like that, with people come in and they forge a relationship with somebody at one of our events, and and I don't even see it till much later. I don't even know about it, and suddenly they go off to do something and something happens. So it's in the gathering of such people, people involved in this kind of work, and it's in the kinds of conversation, it's in the atmosphere. And I know that you're going to be creating all of that with your immense talent and your enthusiasm and your really good positive energy and creativity. So thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're pretty busy right now, and look forward to seeing you again. Thanks so much, Ali.
Thank you, Meredith.
Thanks.